The year was 2007, and almost nobody in the world had a clue about such a new game as The Witcher, which was just released that year. Of course, except in Poland and some other East European countries, where Andrzej Sapkowski and his books were rather well known. I wasn't a fan of The Witcher that times, it all came to me much later, despite I was a fantasy-crazed kid. But I remember a couple of my friends which have been familiar with Andrzej Sapkowski's books and the story of Geralt. They started playing the game that year, and I remember them talking about The Witcher as about a great game. Then 8 years passed after that, and the year was 2015. The Witcher 3 was just released in May 2015 and was on the peak of a hype. Only by the moment of release of the third part of the trilogy, The Witcher games became worldwide known. And I was so much hyped about The Witcher 3, as well as many players around. Seeing all the players on YouTube who started playing immediately without even bothering themselves with getting acquainted with the first two parts of the trilogy, I sensed there was something wrong about it, because I knew that starting playing a trilogy of games with a single continuous story from the last part was completely not a good idea. It would have been something like reading a book not from the beginning but from the middle. So in summer 2015, while everybody around was playing The Witcher 3, I decided to start the trilogy from the very beginning. That's how my journey in the world of The Witcher started. And only by the moment I got to the second game and then finally to The Witcher 3, I had realized how right that decision was. It allowed me to get maximum impressions from the trilogy and to learn the whole story as it's supposed to be learned. And now, another 3 years later, I started it all once again from the very beginning. I passed The Witcher 1 for the second time several days ago, and I was surprised how much I enjoyed it, maybe even more than the first time. That was what inspired me to give some arguments about why The Witcher 1 is still so good. So, is The Witcher 1 still a good game in 2018, 11 years after its release? For me, as for a fan of the trilogy, the answer is obvious, but what about players who have never played any of the Witcher games, or those who have played The Witcher 3 only? What about them? If you are one of such players and you've never played The Witcher 1, in this video I'll try to show you that The Witcher 1 can be almost as interesting and enjoyable as The Witcher 2 or 3 even now in 2018. Let's remember and take a look at such main aspects of the game as the story, gameplay and combat system, graphics, and especially the atmosphere, which is probably one of the most important things in fantasy RPG game. There is no secret that today, after more than 10 years, the most important thing in The Witcher 1 is its story. Because it's a part of the big one story of the whole trilogy, and I personally think there can be no excuse to skip the first game if you really want to plunge into the Witcher universe. Even if you dislike the old graphics or old-fashioned game design, you must know the story in order to be ready for the following plot and fully understand characters and many other things. The attack on Kaer Morhen, relationships between Geralt and Triss, the story of Temeria and King Foltest's family, and how Geralt lost his memory, which he desperately tries to recover in the first part of the trilogy. Here are just some of the things you must definitely know by the moment you start The Witcher 2. The story of The Witcher 1 is quite different from the stories in The Witcher 2 and 3, and it's great in its own way. Though it's not as epic by scale as in the following parts, yet it's very immersive and filled with its own unique atmosphere. The main part of the story is built around chasing the antagonist named Azar Javit and mysterious Salamandra organization, which stole mutagens and Witcher secrets from Kaer Morhen. Of course, it all leads to the bigger consequences and creates a basis for all what will happen in the following parts. But the most part of the Witcher 1 story is very chamber. Nonetheless, it explains a lot in the Witcher universe's lore and is filled with many significant details which can not be easily skipped.
You mentioned defending Kaer Morhen before.
Yes. 15 Witchers once lived here, training boys for their trials. Only they knew the secrets of mutation. Witchers who set out on a path and failed to assimilate among humans wintered here. Before the battle, 23 witches and 40 students called Kaer Morhen home. Too damned few for the mob that attacked. I never knew why they came.
The great thing I see in the Witcher 1 plot is that it's a mix of big and small scale stories. There is one complete smaller story within a bigger picture, with a lot of cliffhangers to the bigger epic saga formed by all three games. That's why I think playing The Witcher 1 is absolutely necessary for a real fan of the Witcher trilogy. Of course, playing The Witcher 1 could be much easier if it was not for the old graphics, which might be a serious obstacle for some younger players. But I would say The Witcher 1 graphics is normal and it looks fine even today, especially if you use some nice mods that can really improve it by adding HD textures, better character models, new interface and of course new swords with sheaths, which game lacked very much. Yes, The Witcher 1 graphics and design were a bit backward and out of date even for 2007, but the game itself is made with notable effort and diligence, and for most players it would be only a matter of couple hours to be dragged into the game. To describe that better, I'd say that game has a soul. Of course, it's a very personal and specific thing. Whether you'll sense it or not depends very much upon a player, but the immersive story with deep story background will help you with this. I'll tell you that the graphics of 2007 can still look really awesome. By the way, the old game design of a classic linear RPG had definitely taken a part in the creation of that special atmosphere reminding of the times of old isometric RPGs of 90s era. Actually, The Witcher 1 is a great opportunity to experience that style of old RPGs like Baldur's Gate, early Fallout or early The Elder Scrolls games, cause the gaming experience is really similar to that classic games. But The Witcher 1 is not entirely like that. I mean, it's not that old-fashioned game. It was something right in the middle between the era of classic RPGs and the modern games like Dragon Age, Skyrim, Fallout 4 and of course The Witcher 3. The combat system of The Witcher 1 is also something special and quite different from The Witcher 3. And though it might sound strange, but I think it's great in its own way as well. It is based on combos, accurate timings and different fighting styles for both Geralt's swords, which you have to use for different enemies and be ready to switch between them every couple of seconds. It all makes combats in the game pretty hard in some cases and situations, but to see Geralt whirling in his unstoppable combos is absolutely priceless. But if you played the game, you've got to know that the technical side of the gameplay was far from perfect. Even if you play Enhanced Edition with a bunch of mods, you'll inevitably face some bugs and glitches. Sometimes combats can seem way too hard, and not because of the game's difficulty, but because of a bit crude mechanics or locations design. But these small drawbacks are not so serious and critical for the gaming process, yet they can disturb from time to time.
I've taken Berenger's job, decided to handle this problem myself.
We have a serious problem. The underwater city is the source of the village's wealth.
All these things create a really old school and even hardcore RPG game, which may be not so easy to get into for many young players. Still, this game is a true RPG with different choices and consequences. You can choose the side of the Order, you can choose the side of Scoia'tael, or you can choose to remain neutral as a true Witcher. You can choose Triss or Shani, and it all affects the ending.
I left the boy with Triss to keep him safe.
How could you? She cast a spell on you. Out of my sight. I will forget your very name.
Shani has the child.
Do you have any idea what you've done? You've sold out the city for a redhead. Get out of here before I turn you into the pig you are.
Ah, women.
Eventually, considering all the ups and downs, this game has turned out far from a masterpiece, but a good and original game with a distinctive spirit and atmosphere, which East European style and mythology had definitely taken an important role in. Maybe The Witcher 1 wouldn't have stood the test of time if it were not for these two most significant features: the story, which still remains actual thanks to The Witcher 2 and 3, and the atmosphere of a true RPG adventure based on the East European setting, which was completely unique at times. And I think that's mostly the main thing you have to keep in mind about The Witcher 1, so that to successfully get into the game. This game has come a long way, earned the love of many RPG fans around the world, and became a classic which got a new life after the release of The Witcher 3. And if you are an RPG player or claim yourself to be a fan of the Witcher universe, but still haven't played it, you certainly must. At least what can be better than that unforgettable, mind-blowing Geralt's movesets? And don't you dare write me it's not realistic. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If so, feel free to press like and subscribe. And besides, if you're interested to watch a really good walkthrough of The Witcher 1, you might check the link in the description. That's my game movie on The Witcher 1, and it's really well made. All the choices are made very accurate, and all the dialogues, important quests and details are here. So, you can watch the whole plot of The Witcher 1 in just one day. And wait for some new videos on Cyberpunk 2077, which will be here soon, and see you next time.